Well, YouTube, what a difference a couple of days and another game can make. Uh, Game two, Leafs Jackets was completely flipped the script. Much like my comments about what the Leafs kind of needed to do to get back into the game, they did. Their speed. They didn't let the Jackets grind them down and stuff like that. They used their speed to great effect. They were skating to score, and they were also skating back to defend. They were moving their feet almost the entire night. Bit of a slowdown in the third period when they tried to defend the lead, which is always dangerous, but they were able to pull that off. The Leafs are also a team that like to sometimes go backwards more than they go forwards. There was less diddling around with sending the puck back into their own zone and going backwards and doing all that stuff, with the exception of that drop entry they do a lot on the power play and at other times to try and change things up. It was mostly forwards or side to side. There wasn't as much backing up and creating your own problems, right? Their passing was crisp. It was hard. They didn't seem to be suffering from, like I said, there was a lot of rust, I thought, in that first game, and pucks rolling off of sticks and stuff like that. They didn't suffer from that in this game either, and their decision making was a lot better. So what it amounted to was a complete beatdown of the Blue Jackets. It was just night and day between those first two games. All of a sudden, it reminded me of a long time ago in the 1993 playoffs, when the Leafs, having eked into the playoffs, they were in tough in the first round against the Detroit Red Wings, who I don't know if they were the top seed in the West, but they were one of the top couple teams, and the Leafs were obviously near the bottom, and everybody thought the Wings were going to run away with that series, and the Leafs battled them to 7 games and eventually prevailed. But and this is one of my favorite parts of this video that I used to watch, called The Passion Returns, which kind of Joe Bowen hosts it, and it was a kind of document of that magical season, and especially focused mostly on the playoff run they had. And it reminded me of that Red Wings series, especially the first 2 games that were in Detroit. And a guy back in the day named Dino Ciccarelli, who played for the Wings. He was a very talented player, just a little guy, but he was nasty, especially in front of the net. He was causing all sorts of problems for the defense, for Felix Potvin in net. And the first 2 games, I think Detroit took them both, and he was a big factor in that. And then they went back to Toronto. They changed their game plan, and it was like all of a sudden that was no longer a factor. They found a way around it, and they went on to, like I said, take that series in 7 games, and they just adjusted their game plan, and that's kind of what the Leafs did in this game, from game 1 to game 2. Is all of a sudden the Columbus forecheck, you didn't even notice it. It couldn't get going, and the Leafs were just exiting the zone great. Like I said, the crisp, short, hard passes and the speed they were utilizing, and the decision making, it all just amounted to those few differences made all the difference. And after the first period, the shots were 15-5. After 2, they were like 28-12 or something like that. And eventually they almost doubled them in shots at like 39-20 or something like that. So the Jackets were never really in the game. But it being playoff hockey, of course, it's always tight. Even if one team is significantly better than the other, there seem to be very few blowouts in the playoffs. The goalies dial in, people sacrifice to block shots and stuff like that, and it always seems to be close. So as the game rolled on, the Leafs scored, I believe it was in the first period. Matthews, a give and go with, I think it was Nylander. Nylander just kind of threw the puck to him as he was cruising towards the net in the slot, and he just redirected it with his stick, far corner, inside the post, and that was the 1-0 lead in the first. And it stayed that way for a while, and you just knew, like, if this is playoff hockey, if Columbus just gets one break where it bounces in off somebody's ass or face or whatever, that could be it, right? Like, they're back in the game, and things could unravel from there. That's just the nature of hockey in general, but especially playoff hockey. But the Leafs kept at it. Tavares got a breakaway in the second period, I believe it was, and put it kind of the same spot where Fred had that problem with the goal in the first game. Above the pad, inside the body, below the blocker, and it just squeaked through and was able to trickle in on Korpisalo, and that was 2-0. And eventually the Leafs, they would score an empty netter with less than a minute left. Riley put one in. And the performances in the game, I thought the big boys were the best. Everybody played a pretty good game, but Matthews, Matthews is on when he's got that puck on a string, and it seems like you can't take him off of it. He was playing more like that in this game than in the first game. Tavares had like 8 shots on net, and they were all from his usual area, right around and in front of the net. So he was having a good game, and they both ended up scoring. Nylander, I thought, was pretty solid. Not quite as noticeable as he can be when he's on, but he seemed to be pretty good. Marner, he hasn't looked like, when Marner gets on a roll, he's almost unstoppable, and he hasn't got to that level again yet. He had a lot better second game than he had first game, but he still seems to be struggling a bit. But he's doing other good things, like he's really good on the penalty kill, and in certain situations when disrupting things. A couple times in the game, he just was able to get the end of his skate on a puck and deflected a Columbus potential scoring chance by getting just the edge of his skate on it, and the puck going into the zone or whatever. So that was pretty good. The fourth line, Kyle Clifford started the game with a big hit and took a guy out of the game with concussion protocol. And Nick Robertson, who is the prized rookie in the Leafs lineup, who didn't play a regular season game all year, at least I don't believe so, who is starting on the third line with Kerfoot and who else is on there? I can't remember, but they've been really good in getting a lot of, using their speed and getting a lot of chances in zone time. And Engvall was up on the fourth line with Clifford and I forget who else is on that line, but in place of somebody. I couldn't figure out who dropped out of the lineup, but either way, whatever they did worked. Anderson was good. Obviously wasn't quite as busy as Korpisalo, but he was good when he had to be, especially late. And that's one of the things when he was not facing a lot of shots there for so long. Maybe they can say that can be one of the toughest things for a goalie, is just basically standing at one end of the ice and watching your team barnstorm the other one, and then all of a sudden you haven't had a shot in 10 minutes, and all of a sudden you got to be sharp, right? So he looked really strong. The Leafs D looked really good. Riley played a good game. Muzz had a really good game, made a bunch of key blocks and stuff like that. But unfortunately, late in the game, I didn't like the way the game ended. Halfway through the third, the Leafs started running into penalty trouble, and it was like Spezza for tripping, Kapanen for slashing. I'm not even sure he even got his stick on the guy's gloves, and it wasn't a slash, it was just like a little tap, and like, these refs are fucking brutal. Like, you can't be calling this shit in the playoffs, because it's never called in the playoffs. And maybe they should have thought, the league should have thought more about, okay, well, the guys got to have their training camp and get back into shape and stuff too. Maybe we should have the refs out on the ice doing simulated games and getting used to the fact, like, okay, yeah, you call this in the regular season sometimes. You do not call this in the postseason at all. This little tap on the hands and shit like that. That's brutal. So it didn't result in anything. Well, it kind of did. The Leafs lost a lot of momentum in the third, and Columbus did have some chances later on in the game, and Fred had to be really good. But if the refs hadn't had called that last penalty on Kapanen late in the game, which gave Columbus an extended chance, they pulled the goalie because it was within 3 or 4 minutes left in the game. So they had a power play and they pulled the goalie. So they had an extra 2 skaters out there. And then once that penalty was expired, they could just go right into full strength, pull the goalie, and get the extra attacker. So the refs kind of gifted them this chance to get, for the Jackets to get back in it. And while also killing this penalty, Dubois shoved Muzz from behind when he was trying to clear a puck, and he ended up falling into another Columbus player's knee pad with his face. So he was taken off the ice on a stretcher, which sounds like, fortunately, it's all just precautionary because he was moving his arms and his legs and everything. But either way now, if they hadn't been in that position of having to kill that penalty, that accident never would have happened. And so now they're without one of their best defensemen, and even if he's relatively uninjured, he still won't be able to come back for a while because he had to go to the hospital, and now he's got to go through quarantine protocol before he can get back into the fucking lineup. So, like, it's ridiculous. And I don't think he's seriously injured. They still haven't said yet because like at first he didn't he kind of went down, but he wasn't down, and then eventually they told him to lay down, and like I said, he was moving everything, and the impact with the knee pad, because he was shoved from behind and he went down first and then hit it, he didn't go in as fast as he could have been going, and his neck didn't look like it bent all that much, right? So I think, maybe he just got one of those stingers that causes your arms to go numb and stuff like that. I'm hoping that's what it is, because he's a good guy and a key part of the team. So the game kind of ended on a sour note for me. And just like, I know the shove from behind that Dubois gave him wasn't a big one, but it still ended up in him being taken off the ice in a stretcher, and it wasn't even a penalty. After the refs call these stupid bullshit penalties on the Leafs that put them in this situation, they don't even fucking do anything about that, right? So I've been happy with the quality of the hockey so far, and a lot of the stuff that's gone on in the games, but it just seems like the refs are calling all these stupid chintzy penalties on stuff that is just like, oh, I held this guy's arm, but I'm allowed to push this guy from behind and smack his face off my teammate's knee and take him out of the lineup indefinitely. Or Kachuk's allowed to stomp on this guy's fucking ankle and nothing happens to these guys, right? Like, so I'm a little bit bitter. Not just for the Leafs, but for the Jets. Even though I don't like the Jets, I hate Kachuk, like I said, and that was just a dirty play. And you're letting these guys do these sorts of things, and they never are penalized, yet Kapanen with the phantom slash on this guy, the refs give Columbus a chance to get back into that game really late. So I've got some issues with the officiating, especially. I think the league's done a fantastic job in terms of the model behind the bubble and the way they've been pulling everything off, and the looks of the arena and everything like that, and the format of the playoffs. Like they've found a way that kind of is going to work. But yeah, the officiating. Like, I love playoffs because it's hard-nosed hockey. It's sacrificial hockey. You have to play hard, and to call guys on these little taps and hooks and holds, they don't normally do that in the playoffs. There's a reason why they stopped calling penalties in the playoffs. There's a reason why they don't do the fucking shootout anymore in the playoffs, because this is men's hockey. It's men's fucking hockey. It's not out back on the pond in the middle of the winter skating around each other doing pirouettes. Like, this is hockey. This is what hockey has always been. It's the hardest trophy in sports to win for a reason. So let's keep it that way, right? So I really hope they address the officiating problem, because those were just the two penalties near the end of the game that really pissed me off. But there was a whole bunch of penalties in that game that they were calling, and I'm sure if I went back and looked at them, most of them probably weren't all that warranted, right? Even on the other side, I'd rather them call no penalties at all, unless it's something blatantly flagrant, rather than call almost everything they can find like it's the regular season, right? So that's got me a bit bummed, because of I like tough, physical, no penalty hockey, and also it all led to Muzz being out of the lineup. So the Leafs are going to have to really, kind of put the Muzz thing behind them, and really bear down for Game 3, because in a 5-game series, anytime you go and you get into elimination scenario, it's tough, right? It's tough to come back once you're at the elimination brink, and you're down in games. So they really need to come together, and I'm not sure who they're going to bring up in place of Muzz. I'm not sure who their kind of seventh defenseman is at this point, whether it's Marinson or somebody like that. But we'll find out soon enough when the game starts tomorrow. And yeah, hopefully the Leafs proved they can adjust their game plan, and that they're much better than the Columbus Blue Jackets. But they're going to have to do it even more convincingly next game, because Muzz is a key piece of their lineup, and let's just hope they can do that. Win one for the Muzz, and hopefully roll through the rest of the series without much difficulty. But either way, it's all going to be close from now on out, unless you get a rare playoff blowout. It's going to be tough, close, nail-biting action. So let's see how it goes. So long.